All right, I've got 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Karen, roll call, please. So, sorry, pledge first.
Jeez. We're just trying to be nice. Plus the others try. Say all rise.
Make sure it doesn't fall.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we could do a roll call. Karen?
Doug.
Here.
Karen. John.
Here.
Mike.
Here.
Jerry. Is absent.
Yep, so Jerry is out. We'll work with 4 council members tonight. And then the next item would be approving tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Done it.
Like that.
Motion carries with 4. All right, now we've got our opening section here for citizen comment. If there's anybody who would like to address the council for any matters that are on the agenda, please feel free.
On the agenda or not on the agenda?
I don't know that we've been that specific in the past. What's on your mind? If you, let's start.
If I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm thinking Matt's here for another agenda item. No, please, if you would, just state your name, address, and tell us, or address the council as you'd like.
Well, all of you are probably already familiar. So my name is Elena Thier, and I live at 903 Heather Drive here in Peosta. And I was probably the first one to come into City Hall and address the issue of the new development behind us and the loads of dirt that the first development has added to the backyard, which is creating a drainage soon-to-be issue. And I believe that there are fellow neighbors to the right and left of me that have also spoken to some of you personally, in letters to City Council as a whole. So we had hoped
Recording in progress.
Sorry, that's okay. So when we were, originally when the development was put in, we saw these trucks moving an entire street, one street closer to our houses. And we said, time out. This drainage is not, it's going to affect, it's going to back up into our homes. To pacify us, they smoothed out the easement and created a better drainage ditch. We have not had any issues until this first house is being put up. And instead of leaving their property as was and the appropriate slope for the drainage, they hauled in 10 loads of dirt and built it up. If you're looking at it from one perspective, it doesn't look that bad. But if you're standing at the properties affected, it's a good 6 to 8 feet high. Maybe 8 feet is a bit of an exaggeration. What our concern is once we have all of the houses on that whole street, we're going to have all that drainage coming, and without an appropriate slope for that drain area in the easement, it's going to be, it's almost like they're building a flood wall on their side for their property, and it's going to push it all up into our houses. We have had pictures in the past where the water already comes halfway up our lot. So when you're sitting there looking at stormwater up to your back patio, that's a little too close for comfort. And that was before the street was moved closer. And that was before they built properties that have all their tiling that's going to drain straight out to our yards. So we have a concern. And when we brought it up, it was a surprise to me when you had mentioned that there wasn't a stormwater ordinance previous. So I apologize, you guys kind of inherited this challenge. You know, so our concern is, I know that there was a precedent set in the city of Asbury, in the Forest Hills community, where there were properties, there was a drainage pond, there was a drainage easement, and then they kept building developments upon developments, and eventually it became an issue. And there were people that were flooding, their homes were getting flooded, and I believe it was 2 homes every 6 months. that is not something that I want to deal with. I know that I've seen different, drainage areas where you can just put in a line with drains throughout the backyards, every so often, so it drains and it whisks it away. I don't know what the city is planning with the new wastewater program, if that's something that's already currently in consideration, kind of where it might be, but I just wanted to kind of get my thoughts out there and more formalized instead of everybody talking, one at a time type of thing. So that's kind of my concerns, and hopefully, we can, I know some of you may be looking into it, and I'm not certain what my next step should be, if I should contact the city back, come back to a city council meeting, or, kind of what happens.
Okay. Well, thanks, Elena.
Sure.
If I could ask a couple clarifying questions.
Sure.
You had mentioned you first addressed the council some time ago. Do you recall when that was?
Not the council. I just came into City Hall here.
Okay.
See, this is where I don't have my dates, and I feel ashamed.
That's all right.
But I do know I talked with Shanti, and you had stopped out right away that day, and kind of took.
This year, last year? I mean, how far back are we
this
talking?
year, just
Okay.
April.
Probably about a month and a half ago.
Yes, yeah.
So
It was the week before.
If I can, I got one other
so
question.
last week of April.
There was one other sentence in there where you referred to they. You had talked about they had moved a street or they had changed something. Who's they?
The developer of that. So when we moved in and everybody bought their property, I'm not certain, I'm assuming it's AJ Spiegel, by the way we all speak. But I don't have the legal document. The property behind us was owned by AJ Spiegel. And you could see where there was a road already kind of shelled out and when the field would start. Then my little guy would have been 2 years old because it was a frantic summer of me with a broken foot and a 2-year-old and massive construction equipment right up to my backyard moving. And so they moved that whole road over to put in 2 roads in the same space. Maybe that was the original development, but it wasn't that, visually, that's not what we thought was going to be put in back there, but because it wasn't necessarily rezoned, because it was still residential, we were completely blindsided by, okay, why is this whole road moving closer? So I'm not certain who developed it. I know that a couple of the neighbors had previously come to the city council then and complained at how close it was, how high it was being built up above. That road is higher than a roof line. And to just, if you're already building something to begin with, do you have to build it that high? I can understand if it was the natural topography of the land to begin with, but it was not.
Okay.
So
some of the neighbors had addressed the council at the time the road was going in. That's like 2019, I'm guessing,
Yes.
somewhere that time frame. In the development.
2016.
2016.
Yes.
Oh, geez.
I know, and then it lied for a few, probably 3 years while the ground settled, I'm assuming. Again, I'm not a builder.
Yeah.
And then this particular house that's going in now is the first one on our side. And the rest of the lots, that are going in, looks like it's going to be an even distribution. But we would hate to be that terrible, nasty neighbor to complain after everybody gets all their sod and after all of it's been developed. It's like, I'd rather say something now and be able to make an adjustment of something. So I don't think it's a simple adjustment, but I think it's still a manageable adjustment at this point in time before everybody moves in, their yards are all pristine, and then all of a sudden we have, digging everything back up.
Do anybody know what the response was from the council back then?
I don't
it was
think,
216 now.
I don't think any of you were on the council yet, except maybe Karen.
And that was a long time ago.
And to be honest, I'm not certain if Paul Tram, I know he spoke 3 times. I don't know if he was at the council meetings though. Or
Okay.
if it was just more a letter and he stopped in.
So So since this was put in, has anybody had any water damage since? Any water up there?
No, it's been great.
So what portion of the land is graded differently? Is it the one closest to the bottom?
Yes, the
Okay.
one directly behind Kaiser's.
Okay, so I took a picture of that from the north looking south.
Right, so it looks great from that
It
direction.
looks actually the identical grade as everything around it.
Yeah.
From that,
From this angle, I'm not saying it is.
I'll bring my pictures next week.
Right, I mean, if you take a look at it, this grade is the same as this grade.
No.
and I don't know that we need to go into depth into that right now. I think there's a concern that that we probably ought to at least figure out. I've got a couple questions in here. One of them is this jurisdiction of the city even, or is this a developer? You've had your initial conversations with, I'm going to fill in, instead of AJ, I'll say Royal Oaks Development. I believe that's the company that put the roads in. I might be wrong.
Sure.
So I think the first thing that we need to do is discern whether this is an issue to be resolved by Royal Oaks Development or if this is a city issue.
Okay.
The other thing that just recently changed, was it our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, we just adopted a stormwater ordinance, which I again, need some help interpreting. It's rather technical, but I'm not sure what it would bring to this conversation. Of course, it would only be forward-looking. It wouldn't look backwards.
Yeah, and I think the negligence of the city not having an ordinance after all of these developments are going in, because I'm on the preventative end of things. I don't want to wait till after my house is flooded and then come and squawk.
Yep.
But I know that there are some, further up Heather Drive, over on Cassandra Drive, up above Willow Breaks, where basements have flooded just from other drainage issues. Gingerbread, I know of 2 houses over there that get stormwater in their basements. So I feel like this is not an isolated incident. I think maybe it's something that should have been addressed previously and just might have been just an oversight.
So I do need to take exception to your use of the word negligence.
Oh, I know you would.
Our code of ordinances is continuously evolving as the city grows. We're not in an abnormal place in our growth cycle compared to many other communities. To say that we ought to have had one sooner isn't, I don't think, a substantiated statement. But we do recognize the need, and a stormwater ordinance isn't going to prevent all floods, right? It's not going to prevent all water damage, but it is a big step forward towards trying to help reduce the likelihood of it happening in the future.
Right.
So we're doing the right steps. I don't think it's a fair assessment to say we're negligent in that.
Well, the city of Asbury was found to be, and had to put in a whole new pond and a whole new drainage system. So
And that's,
nobody wants that kind of a legal fight. And in the end, when it's something so minor at this point.
the third part of that I think we could benefit from a little getting more familiar with anyway, is the precedent you referred to in Asbury. If there's a precedent there, then that may be helpful. But in the end, obviously, there's no decision that can be made tonight.
Right.
Other than to recognize the concern and at least dig into those basic elements.
Yeah. I just don't want to keep stalling and delaying. All of us neighbors have been coming and going, and the assumption that somebody else was going to be putting it on for the agenda. And I just decided, I'm just going to be here tonight and say
Well,
something.
I'm glad you did.
So if it does need to be on an agenda, I can circle back around. I'll probably follow up in a week or 2 weeks and kind of see where things are.
Well, I think what I would suggest, rather than have this, if you go on the council agenda, you only get to speak and you only get a response every other week.
Right.
I think we could address this a lot more efficiently
Okay.
if we just have either somebody from the staff or from the council who wants to work as a point person and do a little bit of this preliminary research on the issue anyway.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Are we correct to interpret you're acting as a representative for the street?
Sure.
I appreciate that too.
So
That
let
helps.
me ask, what, I guess, would be a equitable solution on your side?
So either they don't be, I'd rather they not be hauling in 10 dump loads of dirt, because that's only raising it. Originally, when they dropped it off that day, we thought maybe it was just topsoil and they were going to spread it out all over their yard, not a problem. But when they pushed it all back and it goes right up to the easement, So it's, you know, they have done, the easement slope drainage the way it is. If you're putting up a whole 6-foot flow wall on one side, it's gonna back up to the other side. And as more and more concrete driveways are put in, houses are put in, rooftops, and we know that all of the ones up on Casho Drive West, right, the 6th, they also will flow down our backyards too. So that's addition, I shouldn't say all, at least a portion of them will flow down our area as well. And that farm property up on top, if that ever gets developed, is going to start coming down. I'm not going to say 50 years down the road, things are going to change, and I get that. I just don't want them to be hauling in so much dirt and having their backyards sloped to such excess that it's going to push in storm drainage onto another's property. Or the city's easement needs to be able to have the capacity to withstand all of that storm runoff. So, and I don't know if it's so much to worry about their properties, or if I just need to worry about, okay, but the city just needs to control that easement in between. And what can be done on that point.
I would just throw out, and it'll take maybe a little research, but my understanding is that there is no city easement through here, that there might be an existing drainage way of sorts. Looking at the area, which is sometimes off, it appears that's mostly off your property onto the others. So I don't know if the city has any easement here. I don't know if your abstract or your property shows.
It did at the time I moved in, that there was a 10-foot easement.
For what purpose? Do you recall? Sanitary sewer?
Sanitary sewer.
Okay. So there's a sanitary.
So if that's changed, again,
No,
that's
that's
something.
probably there. It's a sanitary sewer easement underground, though not stormwater easement.
Okay,
So two different animals.
okay,
But as a general legal principle, one property owner can't shed water out to another property that would naturally flow to that other property, but you can shed water that would otherwise naturally flow. So if a property owner modifies their property in such a way to shed water unnaturally, then that creates a private nuisance between property owners. I'm back to your question, Jim. We can do a little more research, Mayor. I'm not sure if there's a city matter here. I'm not familiar with the Asbury case, but cities have a lot of immunities under the law, meaning that particularly when it comes to making policy decisions and having a stormwater ordinance or having a more detailed stormwater ordinance is a policy decision. If you choose not to, that's a policy-related decision. So I'm going to guess that there was something else going on with Asbury, kind of different than this, that might have created some liability if that was the case. But that aside, you're at the right point of the game to try to get the word out and to create a cure for this before it becomes a problem, for
Right,
sure.
right.
Because even if it's not a city issue, doesn't mean you won't hear about it
Right.
forever.
right.
And even if it's not technically a city issue, that doesn't mean we don't want to be a part of the solution as well.
Right, right. I mean, I wouldn't like it if I was a new property owner and after I did all that landscaping and hauled everything in and had it looking nice and then my neighbor squawked and then they tear it up. I would not appreciate that either, so.
Do you know if any of the neighbors that have the same concern have tried contacting Royal Oaks Development?
Royal Oaks, that's where we are not certain, I guess, where we go next.
Okay.
So do we go to the city? Is it Royal Oaks? We don't know where the issue lies either. Do I go to Spartan Construction, who is putting in that specific development? So, yeah.
Okay. And I think we can probably help answer that next question of where we go next.
That sounds good.
Okay. Anything else from the council, staff?
Asbury, I just want to add, wasn't her DNR mandate because of those, so they were required to do that stormwater ordinance. Peosta is ahead of that game, so, I mean, fortunately, we've been working on it for probably 2 or 3 years. It's not something that's.
Sure. I do know at least one of the owners was awarded $150,000 because of the floods that they had sustained in their property,
Because they, right, but they were, the city of Asbury was under amazing, that they had to do a good job of that stormwater ordinance. I do know that for a fact, and working with their cycle of stormwater and.
Sure, okay.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate the proactive approach. All right, so that's the citizen comment section. Anything else? Anybody online, Karen?
I don't see one.
All right. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. John, aye.
Okay.
Motion carries with 4. And then we get the update from the Peosta Community Center from Director Bauer.
I don't know if you guys have any questions on anything on my update. I think summer has officially fully begun with baseball underway, softball underway, baseball almost underway. Day camp started this week, so we're off and running. So far so good. So, but other than that, I'm not sure.
What high school programs are using the field?
Down here, just sophomores.
Are the freshmen girls?
Freshmen softball are using our softball fields. Yes. Yes.
Do we have the concession stands open during those games?
Yes. If we haven't, just to know about it, but yeah, no.
I just was
The only
curious.
thing we haven't had concessions open for is some of the semi-pro games, when it's just semi-pro going on.
Right.
Otherwise, we try to have concessions.
I'm curious how you're doing on hiring staff, having the staff that you need.
Struggling maybe would be the best answer for that. Definitely gonna lose next month a bunch of my front desk staff. So front desk staff is going to be interesting next month.
Why are we losing it?
Yeah, that's it. They're going elsewhere. I'll just say that. Make places that make more money, essentially. So, but we're working on. We have a couple applications we're working on. I mean, the beauty of it in the summertime, we work, less hours, so it's not as we have less staff. That would be our only inside where we're slow. So yeah, so it's a work in progress. But
Okay. Anything else for Stacy? Thank you very much. Next up is a report from PD, Chief Comer.
So, had a pretty busy month, I would say. You guys have the reports right in front of you. I'll kind of go through with you. STEP still being continued. STEP, that's the high traffic enforcement for us in Ohio with the STEP wave. That's May 24th through June 6th. I'll try to have those results for you guys next meeting, just because I can't get them. We're still, obviously, June 6th was just yesterday, today, or 6th today. So I don't have all the numbers in yet. So the next step away would be July 2nd, 4th of July time frame, FYI. Right there. Next thing, school radar signs. Those signs up there have been a godsend. I believe you guys see the approximate speed, and that's the average speed on there. Every one of them are right at the speed or under the speed. So I think they're doing their job. And now, don't get me wrong, there are some that go faster. We have those numbers too. But the average out of all the cars are at speed or under. So they're doing their thing, and I think that's a great thing. Next thing, our watch fire body cameras. One of them malfunctioned, was under warranty. I just figured I'd let you guys know that be getting one replaced, possibly even another one, or both of them, get all 3 replaced if they need it. So figured let you guys know that. Still working on the cops grants with Steve Meyer. It's been awful. It's just been a hard experience. The way the Department of Justice has it. It's hard to go through the system of how you find the grant application. I'm working on it. I still have 14 days yet, so we're gonna go ahead, I think. ATV UTV update. Just had 2 issues with the ATV UTVs on the roadway during the daytime hours. Peosta Community Drive Traffic Safety Project. So you guys have seen this. This is I just kind of took it upon myself. I've gotten complaints, the concerns, I guess, of the, the traffic on Peosta Community Parkway over here, and I took it upon myself to install some signs and some speed bumps on the road. So far, I've heard a lot of positive on it, which I believe is a good thing. There were some concerns about people going around them. We're working on that. I mean, the far outweighs the positive of having them there versus people going around them and, going by the parked car area. But mostly what it was installed for when there's stuff going on down there. And the cars are there, the kids are running out the street. That's the part where it slows people down. And so far, I think it's been working. I've been monitoring the area. It has slowed people down tremendously there. So it is working. And I got to thank Dean and his crew for installing that stuff. So I mean, they had to go to the asphalt and get secured into the ground there. So if you have any questions on that before we go forward, I mean,
What's that gonna look like when we move snow?
So they're going to be removed sometime in October, November, before the snow. They can be, they're removable, put it that way, before the season's over, that we can take them out, we'll put them back in the springtime.
Okay.
Yep.
Have you seen, and I apologize, I'm not with the street over, have you seen anybody start to use that?
I have not yet. And that was a concern too, that people, but that's always been a concern for people living on that road, that people were still going down Brenner or Leslie to utilize that street and wrap up around. I have not seen, I mean, I consider probably the same traffic as normal. I haven't seen anybody going around to try to put it that way.
Right.
Yeah, and I haven't got any complaints on that, so. All right, so the next thing, I took it upon myself just to start an annual program called Cones for Cops. Basically, I got with Dairy Queen, and they gave out quite a few certificates, 100 or 200 certificates that they can give out to the kiddos. It's just a public service thing, The kiddos are doing the right thing, they're wearing safety equipment, a helmet, safety equipment. We're doing a good deed out in the community. We're going to be out watching for it. Our officers will be able to give them a helmet. It's just a public safety thing. I think it's a good thing for the summer, anyway. Prescription drug box. So since we've installed that, we've taken in 25 pounds of prescription drugs, and that's fantastic. That's a lot of pounds already that we've taken in. I can say other agencies that come in, most yearly is between 75 and 100 for the small towns that they bring in. We've already taken that just in the first month, so it's being utilized, that's great. So the other thing worth note is we had the outrun for the Raise 5K event. We did traffic control for that, no issues with that, just a lot of traffic for that area. That day, but everything went well. And we talked about that at the last meeting, so just wanted to let you know that all went well. So other than that, any other questions?
I have a couple.
Yes.
The speeds that you give on the radar signs, that's the speed taken at what point? Is it when it first captures them, or as they pass?
Yes, when it first captures them.
Okay.
Yep. And then it captures each time it, gives a speed, that's documented too. So it goes from 30 to 28 to 27, 26 to 25. I believe it captures all of that.
So we've got really good speed compliance going into the zone,
Correct.
is what this is telling us.
Yes.
Okay, and then
Yes.
I've understood from you too that the data shows that they're also really good compliance with slowing down while they're in the zone.
Correct.
That's great.
We looking at buying any more than?
So that was the other thing. So, yes, I have it in for the GTSB grant to possibly purchase another speed sign, but I'm not necessarily looking at a speed sign. I'm hoping I can get a speed trailer. And a trailer is one where you can pull behind a vehicle, set it in a certain, like a certain area in town where we can't, post it on a pole or anything. We don't have a pole available, and it just can sit there and basically like Royal Oaks Drive, where there's no poles on that street. We can just set it there and put it there. So that's coming. It's just waiting on it.
Great.
Through GTSD.
And that's how we got the first ones, right?
Correct.
The two issues with the ATVs, UTVs,
Yep.
what action did we take on those?
They were just warnings for the most part. Basically, they were out during daytime. I was doing school traffic. They were coming across the school area, going out of town. One was leaving town. He was just moving outside town and transporting it that way. Just daily, just off on the road use during not the right time. That's what both of them were.
Have we issued a single citation for ATVs, UTVs yet?
I didn't think it was necessary at this point.
Right.
It's not going to look any good so far.
I appreciate that judgment. All right, and yeah, I appreciate your attention to the speed on in Peosta Community Parkway.
Yep, and there's also a speed sign on Peosta Community Parkway also that will be eventually putting a permanent one there also. And we're going to need to get a permanent one, just like the ones out in front of birds, those kind of signs. So one there that will be able to monitor speeds through there. So I think that's a necessary one to put there too.
And hats off on the cones for cops. It sounds
What's
real.
that?
I said hats off on the cones from cops.
Right.
It's really creative. Great way to engage the kids in a positive way.
I saw it
Chuck?
on Facebook, that was cool. I mean.
Yeah, that's neat.
So not to ask on the radar signs again, is that, for like the summer, is that what they'll act like now, they'll flash?
Yeah, as of right now, yeah, for the summer, they'll still flash like
Just
for
the-
school time. We just left it at that. We could take the flash off during the summer if you wanted to, but it's kind of a programming nightmare, but it's, we can take
It's not as easy as you think.
Correct. I mean, I called the company and they would walk me through how to turn those off, but then we would turn them back on for when school came in. We just figured just let them flash now throughout the summer. Just still a warning that I figured it'd be okay, just let them flash. If you guys want them off, you can, but I just figured more lights and, the more flashing, maybe that would get people's attention too.
Get my attention every time.
There you go. That's what it's about.
Especially when they crest the hill and see his car in the parking lot.
Good stuff. Thanks, Chief.
All right. Anything else for Mike? Thanks, Mike. All right. Next up then is the Public Works Monthly Report. Director Ludwig.
Nothing to really add to the report itself. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask. But the only other thing that I want to bring to your guys' attention, I guess a couple things. One is we did have a water break today that we had to repair, ended up not being a city issue. Was a private service line, so that was a plus for the city. And the other thing is that one of our staff members will be retiring tomorrow. So we're losing a staff member. Therefore, I'm in surge. Especially for a long one.
Dean, you and I talked today a little bit about that. Did you mention anything about doing some sort of temp services? Would we be able to use like a Engage in Sedona or one of the other temp services to do something?
You can, you have to, Sedona, for example, I know there's some contractual documents would have to be worked on and approved by the council to go that route. Another option, especially when it comes to mowing and maintenance, I talked to Dean about it today. You can also go out, I'll say, put it out to bid and hire somebody as a contractor to do that work. They're not on your payroll, using their own equipment, their own time. Work comp, Social Security, Medicare, others, benefits. Maybe as a temporary fix for the summer, maybe as a long-term fix. You might find some people who work during the day but will do that at night. Or father and his son, or mother and son, or whatever the case may be.
The thing I liked about the temporary service is that we use them sometimes in our office, and they're not part of your staff. But you, again, depending on the contract you sign, you get to learn about this employee. Either you love them or you don't, and you can then turn them into a long-term employee. So you get to basically test them out or her out to see if they work out and they get along with
You're getting
everybody.
a more pre-permanent employment.
Pre-permanent, you know, if we just get in
Yeah.
long grass cutting type stuff that we need right now, but it could be
Yeah.
just a thought.
I use them quite a bit, and it seems like this year I've been struggling trying to get that outside person hired, you know, for us that mows grass and brings up litter and stuff like that. It just doesn't seem like we've been having luck, but I know downtown in Public Works, it doesn't seem like they have an issue at all getting staff for inside work, you know. But we don't pay that much either.
So is that the thought, you do part-time in the summer and then potentially full-time?
Well, my actual thoughts are, yeah. And then continue with the part-time. Like I explained to John a little bit, a part-time would actually be beneficial year-round. You know, come wintertime, especially with the expansion and you know, miles of street that we're gaining.
Right.
Well, you know, if it's a bigger snow and a field that we need to call in, you know, some backup, at least we have that resort, or if somebody's on vacation, you know, we got to fill in. You know, otherwise, like last year, when I took off and had my shoulder surgery, just trying to finding somebody to fill in was, you know, nearly impossible. You know, the construction guys that are laid off, that have CDLs, you know, that can operate the type of equipment that we have, you know, that you can trust, they're laid off, and they don't want their unemployment, you know, being affected by 10 hours a week or whatever. Right? So that's the problem you run into with staff that's maybe more reliable in a source that you can, you know, have that capability of them having a CDL or being able to operate equipment that you can trust them. So I think, you know, all in all, I believe that, you know, part-time would actually be beneficial throughout the year. And depending on the year, you know, coming into the fall season, you know, if we're talking colder weather, we try not to get too many projects started outside. So then depending on when the first snowfall takes place, and not that we're wishing on a snowfall by no means, but, you know, you get caught up on shop maintenance and stuff like that. So it's a little bit concerning to try to keep everybody busy then if you have that full-time staff member. But as quick as things go on and as busy as things are now, I think it would definitely be a positive to have that another full-time and a part-time position. Kelly Oak Park alone is probably 3 days or more. So, and like this week, Shawnee did get some, I wouldn't say negative feedback, but some concerns from people that use the park for disc golf as to why we didn't have it mowed. So we missed last week, just trying to get things cleaned up for Memorial Day, you know, just around town, basically. So.
I noticed in here you jet and camera the sewer main and Peosta Acres.
Yep.
How'd it look?
Everything's looking good. Yep. So I'm not finding any defects. We're not actually all done yet, but my goal is to get them down to the intersection of the birds. And, you know, we'll get that far, depending on money, maybe take them up to Royal Oaks and start from there.
Very good.
Just from that street there on, and I believe we get plenty of flow to, the main ain't so much a concern as far as any defects or flows.
Anything else for Public Works? Thanks, Dean. All right, then next, still under Public Works, pay application number 9 for the wastewater treatment facility.
Any concerns on this, Dean?
Also, I scrolled through it and everything does look to be up to par on that.
There were some pictures added tonight too. I don't know if you want me to pull that up on a big screen or if you're good with.
Are those the infamous dewatering bags?
So that's the sludge removal, and yes, the bags that you're looking at are the containers for the sludge. probably 80% of the bags that are blown up is probably liquid water that will eventually drain out.
And the sludge will stay in the bag.
Yep, the sludge stays in the bag. I just felt it'd be helpful, with the discussions we had as far as the removals and stuff like that, give you an idea what the actual sludge removal in the bags actually consisted of.
That does help, thank you. We talked about them, but I didn't know what they look like. All right, and then we've got the application for payment number 9.
I'll make a motion to approve payment number 9.
Before you do, I just had a question. There was some discussion about the refrigerated unit. Was that,
That was from last month, I did a copy and paste.
Okay.
Take it out, we'll just write it
I just wanted to make sure that was resolved from last month. All right, thank you, John.
I'm not gonna make the motion anymore. I'll make the motion to approve payment number 9 in the amount of $811,138.78.
I'll second.
Karen, I.
John, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 4. All right, on to the administration section. The first one is resolution of the City of Peosta requesting the assistance of staff of ECIA. And I believe we've got a representative here. Was it your intent to address the council, Matt?
Yes.
Got a plane taken off?
We figured since a lot of council members are new, we would come out. We have a 3-year, we've been doing the building inspections for Peosta since 2010. I guess 3 years ago, we decided to go to a 3-year contract instead of a yearly contract. I'll be honest, the contract hasn't changed since 2010 besides the rates. The rates are adjusted every year based on what ECI council's rate, what they approve. Your past administrator was on our council. I think the intent would be to have your new administrator on. So again, she'll be working as we work through our budget and set those rates. She'll know what those are. But I guess if any of the council has any questions, comments on how we've been doing, I'd be open for feedback.
I apologize if it's in here. I haven't picked up on it if it was. So the 3 magic numbers are 94, 89, and 57 per hour. Do you know offhand what those were before?
I do.
87 and 56.
I'm not sure what the top one was, so I took those off of the last invoice that we had, so that would be the fiscal year 21. I don't know what the rate is, Matt, I didn't go back far.
I think they went up $2, but
Okay.
when I'm out inspecting, I get charged at the 89, so.
That helps, thank you. Karen, anything to add or any considerations on approving this?
No, it's working well.
Good. Any questions for Matt? We could take a motion to approve it then.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution requesting assistance from staff of ECIA.
I'll second.
Karen, I.
John, aye.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 4. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay,
You too.
Thank you.
All right, the next 2 have to do with salaries and wages. First one for appointed officers and employees, the second one for part-time, seasonal, and temporary employees. So let's cover the first one here, which will be the appointed officers and employees of the city.
I had a little content, actually put it in public content provision, as opposed to administrative, just what it's worth in the wrong box, that's where I put it. Just kind of went through the process that I've been involved with department heads, a little bit with the HR committee. The budget, of course, included a 4% increase in wage I think, very interested in having those discussions when Annette starts kind of working on a process to consider that going into next year. My comment in here, a few things I made some comments. One of them was that would be a good discussion to have with Annette when she starts to consider maybe more of a written policy on how department heads are supposed to look at that. So, other things to consider would be just the current status of wages of city employees versus similar employees in other communities, similar situation. The police chief provided some information that he will want to have further discussions with you and Annette on with regard to his staff. And of course, the fear is if the staff's not paid well enough and there's demand, there's another job waiting for them, and if they leave, you're going to hire somebody to replace them and probably pay them more, because that's just the way the market is. Even with ECC, it sounds like there's some issue getting employees because of other job opportunities. Fast food, it's basically 12, 13, 14 an hour with sign-on bonuses, competing with some employers that you used to compete with.
I was at a Hertz meeting today, and Dyersville just participated in a GovHR survey with other communities around the state of Iowa, and she said she's going to share that with us, but it was shocking how low our wages are. We're looking at an additional $350,000 in their budget for wages, based on that survey.
Talked to their city administrator in the last week, he brought that up as well. It'd be interesting to see it from the standpoint of, kind of looking at it, reliability, is it really apples to apples? Assuming it is, he did say too that even the city administrator salary range is probably, according to that survey, $60,000 underpaid, plus or minus. So it's, it'll be interesting to see for sure.
So for now, for budget cycle, we have a resolution in front of us to approve salaries as they've been defined by the HR committee and the department heads for fiscal year 22, right? So there's a need for the action specifically on this resolution. And I sense from conversation that there's an appetite to discuss more what we want to do with salaries after we make this incremental change.
Yeah, that'd be my recommendation. Obviously, where you sit right now in the middle of June, this needs to happen tonight to put these increases in effect for July 1. And just, the discussion is basically that there will be probably follow-up discussion and requests made going into the next year that could either support it to a mid or during fiscal year change, or at least planning for next fiscal year. Up to the council on that front, of course.
With the new city administrator coming in, we've got an opportunity here to get a fresh set of eyes, a different perspective. We just need to make sure it stays at a top priority for her.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution setting wages and salaries for appointed officers and employees of the city of Peosta fiscal 2022.
Second. Doug, aye.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 4. Thank you for the narrative on that, Mr. Herman. Then the second one, on a very similar vein, is the wages for part-time, seasonal, and temporary employees. There's a comment, Stacy, about the part-time salary resolution for fiscal year 22 is the same as it was in fiscal year 21.
I believe that's right. I think we changed in the middle of 21 because I had added some of those to make them wider ranges, so I had more flexibility within the employees, so I could give them bigger increases to get them kind of closer to where we want them to be.
So just to be clear,
Yep.
what should I interpret that as the pay? You did not recommend a pay increase?
Oh, no, we absolutely have pay increases. So the way I've always done part-time employees in the past is just kind of, you had like the entry level, the max that you get. What
Okay.
I did then was change that max to, so there's a wider range. So I have more flexibility within each level to be able to give essentially bigger increases to get them further on, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so no,
And were you able to do what you needed to do within the 4% guidance?
I may not be within the 4% guidance as far as being able to get them closer to where I want to be. I'm definitely beyond that. However, when I did budget, I may have already, it's in those numbers, so I'm not
Okay.
doing anything that would go at this point beyond.
And I do want to be clear, the council action was to approve a 4% budget increase. It wasn't per department. So the latitude was there to do what you said you did. All right. And I'm going to assume it's safe to say that when we have the upcoming discussion with our new city administrator, that the scope of that discussion would be not just would be for this the employees as well as part-time, seasonal, and temporary. Right? We'll talk about wages up and down for all.
So you're losing some people here shortly, right?
So what?
You're losing some people here shortly. Based off of this, are you going to be able to get people hired in this position?
Honestly, the people we're hiring aren't even, they don't ask about wage ahead of time. That's, I think, the hard part for me is it's not, I don't feel like wage is the only reason I'm not getting.
I just know my kid can go to Dubuque and at Hy-Vee and he's making $12 an hour
Correct.
back groceries.
Correct. Yeah, no, a lot of, we don't even hit the pay discussion until after we hire them. It's just getting them in the door. So I'm not sure what exactly it is at this point. As far as like rec stuff, I'm good, right? Like as far as the day camp and that kind of stuff, like I can find people. It's that front desk, I think, that I struggle with the most.
So that's the level one.
And I don't advertise for what.
That's level one.
Well, between level 1 and 2, just kind of depends.
Okay.
As far as responsibilities, that kind of stuff. But I don't advertise wages, right? So like I put it out there, like front desk, and I have like a X amount. It could possibly bring people. But I guess the reason I don't is because I don't feel like we're all.
So you have a high turnover for that position?
Yes and no. COVID was weird, like, whatever. We get a lot of our older employees back from COVID. And so that, I think, has been the biggest struggle. It wasn't because of how much they got paid, it wasn't because of whatever, it was just strictly, it just changed things, right? Like, some of it was the feeling safe, and then some of it was like, well, I didn't have this job long enough, I'm good, whatever. So it's just different.
I guess to add what John was saying, we'll have to approve this, I'm assuming tonight.
Right.
But I would like to see it come back maybe next month and see if we can't change level 1 and level 2 somehow to get it more.
Well, and that kind of begs the question too, as far as what you're thinking, but Ty's wages are in there too, right? Like, I don't think he's very high to pay front desk staff 14, 15. I think we definitely need to look at his that as well.
I'm just thinking, I walk into Target, there's a sign on the door saying we're paying $15 an hour to bring in carts. It's not a great position to be in, but that's just the world we live in right now.
It is.
I'm thinking about picking up a part-time job and moving carts around, for crying sake.
I work with staffing agencies, and it's a problem everywhere.
But my daughter just got her first job at some clothing place, and the young kids like to go. And it's $18 an hour.
Yeah, she's not going to have any money because she's going to spend it.
Oh, yeah.
She's going to spend it on what she's shopping.
Yeah. But it's like $18 an hour. First job.
Yeah. So anyway. So
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see next month come back with something.
Well, I think what you're suggesting will be what we have it on deck for our next city administrator when she comes in.
Right.
I would like to see something at the next meeting though, because being shorthanded, like John saying, $50 an hour,
Okay.
Do you advertise at the high school?
So what?
Do you advertise at the high school?
I have.
Okay.
I've had them like send out emails and that kind of stuff too.
Well, because they can put that in their daily address or whatever they announce, the daily announcements.
And we've done like NSCC and that kind of stuff in the past as well. Trying to target kind of older people.
Yeah, it might be an idea too, I mean, that's 2 years down the road, is when the dorm gets up.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Anyway. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution setting wages for part-time, seasonal, and temporary employees of the city of Peosta fiscal 2022. John, aye.
Okay.
Motion carries with 4. So next up then is administrator report on development agreements.
The only thing I stuck in there, because there's another agenda item, the next number of them will be related to development agreements. So this one, I just noted that there's kind of 2 in the pipeline that aren't ready to move yet, and that's the Dollar General proposed project and the Ace Hardware project. Ace Hardware is further along, I understand they've got an engineer working on their site plan and their layout. Dollar General is not there yet. I did get a call from that guy today, and I will forward again the application for incentives as you go. To my knowledge, that hasn't been completed and turned in yet by him. So I've talked to him about what he's looking for generally, but he wants to get on the record and get that turned in for us to take the next step.
I'm assuming a site plan like this Dean will be involved before it comes to the council.
I'm sorry.
I'm assuming like a site plan like this, that Dean will be involved before it comes to the council.
Should be Dean or Annette, some combination of that. Yeah. Karen mentioned Propulse as another one that may be in the pipeline, because I haven't done any of that, and I guess, yeah, I haven't seen that it's done, so. Okay.
I thought we had something on Propulse.
What's that?
I thought we just had something recently on Propulse.
It's in the urban renewal amendment, but I don't know, we don't have a good development agreement for it, I know that for sure. But I don't know if they have an application, if there's one that was turned in or not.
Oh, geez, right there. Excuse me.
So the next 5 agenda items we're about to go through are all setting dates for meetings related to these development agreements. By the time we get to those dates, do you expect that we would have, I know we talked about this previously too, something that just lays out for us the past agreements and the agreements in front of us, so each one of these decisions can be made with full awareness of the other ones?
Yes, that Karen's provided me some of that detail. I'm love to try to get you that. The goal tonight was twofold. One, to get the ball rolling on some of these, particularly get the ball rolling on the Peosta Square. So the developer can move forward with the tax credit application he wants to complete with the state. So getting on the agenda, I've attached draft development agreements that are, I think they're near final form. The only thing I caution you that I want to spend a little more time on, and Karen will have to look at, in these development agreements, there's so many dates that come into play as far as 2021, 2022, 2023. When's the project going to be completed? When are they going to make their first request? Which would then put Karen in a position to bring to you the appropriation request. And then when's that money come in, and when do they get their first payment? And that's all tied to kind of when they finish the project, when they make the request. So it just, it's easy putting together those development agreements, particularly when you're working on 5 at a time, to maybe get a date wrong. But we'll get that cleaned up before the public hearing meeting. The key points I've laid out in the board docs, and I might have listed a couple of key points in some of these, but what I tried to tell you was, generally speaking, what's being looked at. For example, not to jump ahead of Peosta Square, I explained, for example, the proposal is a 20-year rebate not to exceed $1.5 million, with not including up to administration costs of up to $8,000. That $8,000 is a number that's in all of these agreements, that was in prior agreements as well. And basically what that is, that the city's spending some money to make this happen, either on John Danos as a bond counsel or on me putting this together. And you're gonna recoup those. So the developer, that comes out of their first potential rebate. But that money that they give you back towards the maximum $8,000 doesn't count towards the $1.5 million is what this is saying, really. But it's kind of pennies looking at the big picture. A number of these I tried to tell you when the developer told me the proposed completion date was. A couple of those I might have forgot to enter that. Some of these are looking to be done by the end of 2021. Others are going to be done sometime in 2022. West Schulte, for example, one of his probably the apartments, college suites, will be largely done by the end of the year, but probably not done. So in theory, as we get closer to the end of this year, depending on how we write the agreement, he could go ahead and submit his request for a rebate to be part of the certification in December of 2021. Then the property rebate is going to be based upon an incomplete value of that building if he's, say, 70% done. So his rebate would be shrunk because he's only going to get a rebate of 85% of that 70% value. When I've done these in the past and talking with developers, generally it's in their best interest to wait till you have 100% valuation, which will make your rebate bigger. So that's, I talked to him yesterday and he was going to think about that, and I didn't hear back from him today. So the way it's set up, it would not kick in until it was 100% complete. So I'll look into Propulse, Dollar General, Ace Hardware would be the other three. Can you think of anything else that's been going on? Okay. So,
No, that's a lot of finding bits and pieces around.
I was just thinking, we've got a lot of stuff going on.
There is, and it's a fantastic problem.
Yeah.
it is.
But with as much growth as we're having, we absolutely need to be on top of this. And Doug, I really appreciate your diligence in trying to pull the pieces together and put them together in a way that makes it easier and we can more reliably process through them.
Sure. And if you want me to, it might be easier if I just kind of generally comment on E through I, kind of in summary, and then you go back and take each one as a separate motion.
Absolutely. I was just clicking through, trying to pick out, because the motion or the action is to assign a date at which we will consider these, right?
Yeah, and I built into the resolution the next meeting. That's what we talked about, June 22nd.
Okay, that's what I was trying to verify.
Yep.
No, if you would like to set the stage for the next 5 actions, please do.
And you'll have to modify those resolutions because they don't look like yours.
I just moved.
Worked out the resolution that I had, so Carol made it look like yours. I just was running short of time. So these are all similar from the standpoint that they are rebate agreements, so they're providing a rebate of new taxes paid, new taxes created back to the developers. The cross-stick one is unique in that that development he's got some infrastructure, and then he's going to build things, apartments and some other things. But he's kind of locked into beginning his rebate at a certain time, his request, and that property won't be fully developed. It's not like he's building a tap room, So as his project develops, his rebate, you're going to see it going up from year to year to year to year, as more and more increment is there, more and more new tax value. So that one's a little unique compared to the others. The tap room is unique compared to the others, as it includes, in addition to the rebate, a $50,000 forgivable loan. And that would get paid as soon as the development agreement goes through the public hearing and is approved, basically, and he submits it the necessary paperwork. He would get the $50,000, accruing interest at 3%. At the 1-year anniversary of that, plus or minus, he owes the city $10,000 plus the interest unless he's met his obligations. If he's met his obligation, that $10,000 plus interest goes away. Then you go another year. He submits his paperwork, if he's met his obligation, that $10,000 and 3% interest goes away. So after 5 years, he's done everything he's supposed to all along the way. He doesn't have to pay any of that back. did add some language to one of the draft documents that was here. The way it's written is if really, if any of those years, 1, 2, 3, or 4, anywhere along the way, the developer doesn't meet his obligations, so he doesn't get that 10,000 waived, he loses the right to waive the rest after that. Okay? So for example, if he does what he's supposed to year 1, he gets his 10,000. Something year 2, doesn't follow the rules, doesn't submit what he's supposed to, so that 10,000 for year 2 is not forgiven. Instead of messing with them, what do we do about the next year? The way it's written anyways, anywhere along the way, you don't get it approved because you've messed up. The rest of it becomes unforgivable, and you won't. And this requires a promissory note that'll go with it. And the promissory note will include those terms as well, to make that point clear. The Peosta Square is a little bit more because it's a more expensive project, so the request is a little higher, so that one is requesting a 20-year rebate at 85%. The College Suites, 15-year, 85%. The CrossFit is, and I didn't mention this either, it's also, the other unique part of that is it's a 70%. So these other ones I've mentioned 85% rebate, this one's 70% of the increment is available to be rebated. But CrossFit is eligible to 42% of that 70%, and the other 20% of that new increment is going to kind of get preserved or reserved for people who do projects within this development. So if somebody comes in and builds a Pizza Hut, then they'd be eligible to apply, and their benefit would come out of that 28% of the increment. It's the most complicated of these, trying to do the math and see how that makes sense. But generally speaking, the idea is here's all the increment we're willing to give back. We're going to give you some, and we're going to sit on this for those people that actually build in your development, so that there's some money for them too. And that one is also longer. That's 20 years instead of a 15-year. The Peosta tap room I mentioned, and that is also the 15-year, 85%, which seems to, what I'd almost say for a lot of these projects, that seems to be kind of the norm. And then the Peosta jumble is also 85% over 15 years. These all have maximum rebates, which were numbers that were calculated before I became involved, so I just used them. And I think the idea being that if the property ends up being valued at what we think it will be, they won't probably exceed that. But if values go through the roof, then maybe they could, but when they hit that number, it stops. So the coffee shop, for example, the maximum rebate would be $200,000. So if in year 10, all of a sudden they've hit $200,000, it's over. It doesn't go 15 years. So that's the cap.
So it's a cumulative cap.
Yep. Yep.
Tap room and Jumbo Coffee, are they gonna fall under CrossFit's?
No, those two were specifically accepted. So the CrossFit one, any increment created in those two properties doesn't go to CrossFit side, it only goes to those two. Yep.
So 22 of the 24 lots in phase 3 are in CrossFit's agreement.
Good question.
These are the only 2 lots that aren't there?
Correct.
And there's no opportunity for others to be carved out. That ship has sailed.
Except, but for that 28% of the 70% that we're sitting aside, that would be eligible for anybody new that might come in.
Okay.
And then nothing else will be, they won't get the rebates at like tap room, and are they still eligible for other things, the ones that come in on CrossFit?
Yeah.
They would still be eligible for more?
Yep. It really depends how quick that overall development goes, how much increment is made available by it. But that goes back to the CrossFit one where the agreement provides he gets part of the overall rebate that's going to be eligible. He can get 42%. Well, that's wrong. You said that number, I guess. But 70% of the overall.
42% of 70.
Yeah, so he gets 42% of the 70, which is maybe the wrong way to say it. So 30% won't be rebated at all. That'll go wherever it's supposed to go. The 70% eligible for rebate, 42 goes to CrossFit. The other 28 will be available for somebody else who comes in who wants to build something over there. Convenience store, restaurant, whatever it may be. And depending on how fast that area grows will dictate how much money is available in that 28%. So it is, it's that, all of the development agreements tied into that district or that area will be a little trickier because of that. But there is money available for them.
You don't know why it was done this way.
I believe in conversation that we had with Brett and Slavic, they wanted to preserve some increment for potential developers as a little bit of a carrot to help them sell lots. Is my understanding,
And these two were excluded.
because they purchased ahead of time.
Which it seems like a good thing for the city, right?
It is, and it's also a good thing for Brett and Slavic. I mean, it's a good thing for the city because when you incentivize the developer to get these lots sold and built on, they're going to recoup their money faster, the faster they can get them.
And just to be clear, everything we're talking about outside of the forgivable loans, everything we're talking about is rebating tax money that is generated by the development.
Correct.
It's not money coming out of a budget somewhere.
It's money we don't have anyway.
Even the forgivable loan, right? I asked Karen about that because from a timing standpoint, last December, you didn't certify for that $50,000 loan. So to pay it now before you certify and collect it, how do you do that? And what you've done in the past, the one example I think is did an internal loan. So you did an internal loan to make that money available from your local franchise fees. To make that money available, then you loaned it. Well, now there's a debt. You know, the debt is TIF owes the city franchise fees money. So then you can certify in December your TIF to get that $50,000 back. So it'll end up being increment dollars paying for that as well.
Understand?
So for tonight, not to cut you off, any more questions, feel free, but we need to go one by one to approve the resolution scheduling the public hearing. And the way I've done these always, you'll see in the title of the resolution, it's actually resolution preliminarily approving development agreement and scheduling it for public hearing. And in the body of it, you will note that obviously I don't want the approval language too strong because part of the process is getting public comment at a public hearing. But what you're really doing is telling the public, generally speaking, this is where we're headed. So we're preliminarily approving these terms. We want you to know that. So if you want to be heard, come visit us, come tell us what you think, submit your comments. So that's why I worded that way as opposed to just scheduling a public hearing.
Not sure I picked up on the difference, the subtlety there.
Well, you can just, we're going to schedule for public hearing a development agreement. It really isn't any statement that where the council stands on the development agreement. If that makes some sense. So by giving it some preliminary approval, you're saying, not only are we just throwing out a development agreement for public hearing, who knows where we're going to land on it, we're telling the public, this is kind of where we're at right now on these terms.
The intent behind that subtle change is to make it clearer and maybe draw better public engagement
I think so.
in the process.
Yeah. And
Good.
it also lets the developer know that, if you're kind of headed where he wants or she wants to go with the terms, so that they can visit with whoever city staff, the mayor, council ahead of time, or prepare to make their pitch, a little bit more clear, etc.
Okay, so we've still been having a discussion under item 6D, Administrator Report on Development Agreements. Are we ready to move on to each of the development agreements?
Yep.
All right, so the first one up is the preliminary, scheduling a date for the preliminary approval of the development agreement associated with Peosta Square. The date we're shooting for
June 22nd.
for all of these is June 22nd. And we can take a motion to approve this resolution setting the date.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution setting the date to preliminary approve the development agreement with West Schulte Peosta Squares on June 22nd.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen,
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 4. Next one is the preliminary approval for the development agreement with College Suites.
I'll make a motion approving the resolution of setting the date with preliminary approval, approve the development agreement with West Schulte College Suites on June 22nd.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 4. Next one is setting the date for the preliminary approval of development agreement with Slavic related to Thunder Valley Estates 3.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution setting the date for the preliminary approval of the development agreement with Crosvic Development Thunder Valley Estates Number 3 development project on June 22nd.
Second that. Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 4. Next up is setting the date for the preliminary approval of a development agreement with Thunder Valley LLC, also known as Peosta Taproom.
I'll make a motion setting the date with preliminary approval with Thunder Valley LLC, Peosta Taproom for June 22nd.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 4. And lastly, resolution setting the date for the proposed or preliminary approval of the development agreement with Kalbman Real Estate LLC related to Peosta Jumble.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution setting the date of the preliminary approval for the development agreement with Kalbman Real Estate, Peosta Jumble on June 22nd.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Mike, aye.
Motion carries with 4. And I'll just point out, there's probably a lot of cities that would love to have 5 development agreements all queued up at the same time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's good. What, 5 days after she starts?
Yeah. Welcome to
I'll be busy.
Peosta.
That's good though, right?
She likes economic development.
She better.
All right, so that walks us through the rest of the agenda as far as what's been programmed in. We've got, lastly here, another opportunity for citizen comment.
I got one more thing before that.
Do you have the, quotes for city hall stuff?
That's what it's up.
Okay, perfect.
Good save. You want to review these at all tonight?
What's the topic?
The city hall quotes.
Remodel versus
Ah,
addition.
Be in front of you, because you'll be more familiar with what you're looking at.
yeah, what,
Any we like?
Pardon?
Would it be better to make a copy and pass it on to the
Yeah, Pete and I talked about these this afternoon. I haven't seen on the agenda, so I didn't copy them.
While they're doing that, I just want to ask, or I guess bring attention that, we just potentially are in the process of approving 5 development contracts with, meaning businesses are going to grow. So we as staff need to make sure that PD's staffed, public works staffed, city staffed, making sure that we're looking down the road that we're not going to be sitting understaffed in all areas. Because I think once this pops, it's going to pop. So I just want to be thinking to the future that, I know we're not going to go out and hire 5 people now, but be conscious of it, of what we're looking for.
Oh, trust me.
The other thing I want to bring up is somehow reaching out to the fire department, making sure that we're situated well with them. They're situated. They're with the same game plan of what we've got. And they know what's coming.
I I agree 100% with John, and add to that equipment wise too. Just not allowing to use staff.
You're right. I mean, just let's look.
And on top of that, I mean, I'll be quite honest, that our shop down there is undersized. So, I mean, and that's gonna consist of property.
I would love for one of you guys to come in and say, geez, I've got way too much room. I said, I would love for one of you guys to come in here and say, I've got too much room.
Right. Well, we can start doing less, then we won't have any.
Thank you, ma'am.
We got enough of that down there.
Did I miss him?
Yeah. I mean,
I just naturally just.
That was not a teach.
thank you. I think.
I'm not gonna miss you again, let me tell you.
I'm usually that one that people can just look over. It's actually not as, this is the remodel, right?
Is this before or after building expenses have skyrocketed?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. So,
City Hall needs a coffee maker.
what's that?
City Hall needs a coffee maker.
Go spend $25 and get one.
Run around somewhere.
It's $25. Spend $30 and go get one.
So obviously, there's a lot of new information available here. What's our objective tonight?
I guess this, I brought it with me, Dean and I talked about today, I think I brought it with me because I thought we could have Dean talk about his report, but we didn't. But, just kind of reporting that he's taken some steps and obtained some numbers kind of based on your direction, looking at remodeling here, and also looking at the other end that I think Doug had brought up initially, add on to the other end of this building and remodel, move it there too, as opposed to. So, again, I'll have Dean cover these because he knows which ones go with which a little better. Some are more standalone, others you need to look at 2 or 3 together to get a feel.
So this one here in particular.
Yep.
Is a quote, basically a square foot quote put together by Larson Construction. That's doing the construction on the college suites. That is basically square foot complete. On an average building, you know, basically the basics, this is what they propose per square foot. So I mean, they can take that number, 700,000 or the 770,000, basically divide that by 2,800 square feet. We could accumulate to the existing. I think it comes up somewhere around, don't quote me on it, I never took,
You know, 275 square foot.
yeah, I was gonna say around 300. And then on the renovation of the 300,000, I wanna say that comes up to like 250 a square foot.
Yeah, they've actually got it on
Do they?
there. Yep.
150.
150.
Yep.
Okay, 150.
So when Larson did the one for the new building addition, they used 275 a square foot. Does that adequately consider that there's 2 existing walls?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And again, these are just very, very plain
Pretty much-
ballpark.
Pretty much basic, just pulling an average off of
Right.
existing buildings that they've done in the past.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean.
Ballparkish.
Yeah, I mean, you can elaborate on this and, you know, if you want something to stand out face or, you know, draw the attention that this is City Hall, this, that, kind of thing, but yeah, this is just the basic, pretty much what is existing, matching existing.
So according to them, it'd be $800,000 to build a new space attached to here, $300,000 to renovate this space.
Correct. And keep in mind, so with the renovation, that would not include any plumbing. Over there, I told them on the new, I told them to add in bathrooms. 2 bathrooms and say like a break room. So that being said, that would also consist of doing a separate tap from the water, which would be across the street, and then sewer that would run separately as well.
So this $300,000, does that take into consideration the heating and air conditioning of the remodel?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's figuring in the existing that's here. Not new,
Not new, but-
system.
Okay.
So we would, I'm
Who's
sorry.
this from?
Larson Construction.
So to the renovation from Larson, we would have to add the estimate for a new HVAC system, right?
Correct.
Different than what you said.
So the 11.5 would be added onto the 300,000?
Yes. That is correct.
Okay. For a capital project like this, Karen or Doug, how would we finance something like this? What would it look like to us in an operational budget?
Well, you could borrow money in theory, right? Depending, you know, this next set of numbers, I think suggests quite a bit less, might put you under the $500,000 mark. You could do a bond issue, or you could work with a local bank even, but either way, you're looking at a boat, I believe. Yeah, just over 400, and it's considered vertical infrastructure as opposed to horizontal infrastructure. You'd have to get a vote of the people. If it was 400,000 or less, then there's a window in there where there can be a reverse referendum where you don't have to take it to a vote, but people can put a petition together and force a vote. I have to look at that provision to see what that number is. Yeah, it really is necessary horizontal. It's part of it, but it's your streets, your sewer, your water, those kind of things are essential. This is not essential. It's general corporate purpose, I believe is the word. Should know that off the top of my head. But no matter which route you go, it is going to require an engineer or an architect's stamp set of plans and specs, and you have to go out there. The idea here was just to get a feel, you know, kind of which direction you might want to go.
So either way, it's going to be a debt, and then there'll be a payment schedule. So to our budget, it's taking on an additional payment
It
schedule.
is absent, and I'm not familiar with your budgets, know what cash reserves look like. If you're sitting in use general fund cash reserves, you're sitting on $1 million or $2 million, you could just choose to pay for it.
Okay.
The police station's paid off this year?
I believe so. I think this is the last one.
And then your comment about a public vote or a window where the public can ask for a vote.
Yep.
There's no difference in that determination on whether it's a remodel versus new construction.
Not in this case.
It's
Okay.
dollars.
It's dollars. Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's renovating existing or building new. Okay, this is really helpful.
These last three, right, go together. The email from Sean D with the Midwest construction and the all seasons.
Yeah, and I apologize. So this all seasons quote was for the renovation. And then I forgot to pass on an email to Doug, or print one off. So on the new construction, the HVAC from all seasons would have been 19.5.
Okay.
So you'd have about 295, 350. You'd be under 400,000 if you put together the bid here from Isaiah, that email, Isaiah Prickett. 240,000 for the new, basically, shell, the building shell addition. And then you'd be about 75,000 for Midwest Construction for the interior work. And then you'd be about 20,000 from All Seasons. And then we're figuring it would be another 25,000 for plumbing and sewer and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so there'd be a couple items missing on that, on the alternative here. On the three both put together would be the sewer, and as Doug said, I kind of figured roughly around that 25,000 on the sewer, water, plumbing. And then electrical contractor was supposed to be giving me a quote, which he failed to do. So I'm not sure on the electrical. So that would be added to these three combined. I don't know. I want to say electricity is probably going to be around 30.
So that puts us at about 390. Did I do the math right?
Oh, at the time,
A little higher.
that's what he's looking for. Wait, she came this up on the PV, July of 22 was when it's,
John figured 20,000 for heating and cooling.
Mm-hmm.
Figure 75,000 for the all interior construction.
Right.
240,000 for the exterior building envelope. 25,000 for sewer and water and plumbing improvements, and then electrical. 30,000.
Got 390. Just 390 when we come up with. So in a situation like that, let's say that's our bid, and costs start going over, whatever, and then it goes over the 400,000. How does that handle?
If you were under the threshold for requiring a vote, legitimately based on engineered plans, estimates, etc., and you end up with change orders, that doesn't somehow then make you have to have a vote, because obviously it's too late, you're already building the building. Yep.
Right. Okay, food for thought.
As a next step on this particular project, I was anticipating we would put this in the queue for our new city administrator to manage putting this information together and get into a scenario or two to bring to the council.
And just, I pulled this up quick, the $400,000, over 400,000, you have to have a vote, period. Under 400,000, here's the petition filed with the clerk in the city, asking the question of issuing the bonds be submitted to the registered voters. The council shall by resolution declare the proposal to issue the bonds to have been abandoned or shall direct the county commissioner to schedule an election. If no petition is filed, or if petition is filed and the proposition of issuing the bonds is approved, the council may proceed. So anything under 400,000, petition can be filed.
Regardless of the value, as long as it's under 400.
Sounds right to you.
Okay.
I've looked at that in a while, but that sounds good.
So it occurs to me that the large portion of the public probably doesn't appreciate what the working conditions are here right now. I'm not quite sure how to fix that.
If you're an engineer slash, you might want to, this type of project, you might want to hire an architect more than an engineer, and they put together nice fancy storyboards and things to look at. You can hold a couple open houses and invite people in. Whether you get them here or not is always the other story. Maybe if you have cops with cones, you'll get them here that night. You know, but But yeah, bring people in and have them, give them a tour, show them the place, how it lays out, you know. Even if, I would say this, even if you don't get all kinds of people here, you did it, you tried. You promoted it, you made it available, people had the opportunity. If they choose not to do it, that's a sign that they either must think it's okay, or they don't care enough to know, and they probably aren't gonna pursue a petition if people who might pursue a petition would come.
Are you looking to build, here or like in a new location?
So, the
Well-
one option would be adding on to the end of this building. Or
Yeah.
modeling there.
This part of the building, separate from like the track, there's a corner over there that could be filled in, if you will. So that was one scenario. If you go back a year, there was a pretty exhaustive search around town looking for alternative buildings that exist.
Right, that's why I asked.
And came up with absolutely nothing that was even close to being fitting. But our concern is, I mean, while these offices have served us well, the HVAC system doesn't manage the temperature well, humidity's not managed well. And yeah, as we grow, there just isn't space. You've got to walk through 4 offices to get to a conference room. And like I said, it was good in the time. But as employee retention also becomes a concern, we realize we have to start looking at what's the next thing. And yeah, we had a lot of debate earlier about, the public perception of that, right? So that's where I think the open communication, the open house,
That's a good idea.
transparency of what it is we're trying to do matters.
I think for me personally, I really enjoyed when we did like the Parks and Rec, that questionnaire. That just came out to everybody or on your newsletter. That kind of seems to get out the word a little bit easier. Otherwise, we deliver it, and we have to search the agenda and minutes, and it just communicates easier.
Yep, I appreciate the feedback. All right, anything else from citizen comment? Or, I'm sorry, anything else on the other section of the administrative agenda?
No.
All right. Any other citizen comment prior to us closing?
I just tell Rod, I did speak earlier, so it's up to you if you want to do a ditto or not.
I don't know. I really think that the city needs to look at that waterway and do it again. I mean, it never, they did it originally, which I mean, I'm thankful that they did it. They did it 90% better than it was before, when the subdivisions were being built behind your house, but they never leveled. So they didn't start from the street, my street, down. They started from the pond down. They went backwards. So I mean, I have dirt that's this high and here's the concrete. So I have water that sits in that area all the time. So it needs to be completely restripped all the way down. Yes. But I was told, I think you said, what was that? That's correct.
I'm not sure.
And that was the action that came from the conversation earlier, was we'd like to work with you to figure out where do we go with this. As we sit here, we're not really sure if that's, if that's a city issue or city liability, if you will, or if this is something between the homeowners and the development company, or if it's just specific to the one lot that's currently in construction and bringing dirt in, as you say. So we're not quite sure where it goes yet.
This has been an ongoing, I never decided to come to the city council to get nothing, get nothing, do it. Just my personal opinion, but, this thing's been ongoing since we moved in. But nobody can give me a straight answer as to who owns the property, which to me is weird because,
Well,
Roy Lowe's owns it, or the city owns it.
What piece of land are you talking about?
The waterway that runs all the way back.
Right, that's the $1,000,000 question we just found out today, that it doesn't look like
It's
there's
owned by the
a,
developer.
it doesn't look like there is a,
But how, that to me
I guess
is
I
the
was done.
strangest thing. All the city is where we live, it's the waterway that's the east, right?
Well, there's a
How does the
sanitary.
corporation own a waterway?
it's, but I don't think you know,
It's a sanitary sewer easement the city has there. So underground, there's, I don't know, 8 or 10 inch sanitary sewer main
I
probably.
think he's referring to it
I'm talking one that runs from the streets.
He's talking about the one that's coming from Heather.
So the
Oh,
one that
Cassandra,
goes east to
Heather.
west-ish?
West.
Okay.
Okay,
that's
so we're
different.
talking two different things here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, one's a tributary into the other, so.
Yeah, so yeah, there's actually.
But it's two different things.
Yep.
But they all end up at his lot.
Sure. But it's
So-
two separate issues.
Your concern is a slightly different one than what we heard from online.
Well, it all comes together, so it's.
I understand.
I mean, it is two separate things, but it all ends up in my corner of my lot. And then, you know, plus on top of it, somewhere along the line, I think a farm tile went in before somebody busted the tile, and so now I have an area where I gotta pull this pig in my backyard and just likes to flow water every time it rains. And I don't know how to fix it. And I know it wasn't something I did because, you know, it was right back there, but, so I don't know what happened, when it happened, but, you know, I just look at it and say, it takes a while for it to dry out, let's just put it that way for me to mow. And I try to actually mow that area down to keep it low enough so that the water don't flow. The problem is that nobody else behind there through that area takes care of it, so then that starts to back up and go right back to my yard and just sits there.
So the action that I think we agreed to was try to figure out where is the responsibility, who is the right people to talk to about that, whether it be the city, Royal Oaks, or somebody else.
That was the waterway going
Correct.
north to south, right?
And-
Behind the homes.
Based on what Rodney's sharing, it sounds like we ought to expand the scope to include the other waterway feeding into the same channel.
Okay. I guess who owns that?
So if you were misunderstood, what I was referring to as far as Royal Oaks owning part of the property was the waterway that got cleaned up last year.
Right. Yeah, this past year or something like that.
Last year.
So
Last summer.
that's the thing, I'm trying to have a hard understanding is where's.
I'm quite sure
How does
that-
Royal Oaks only own part of it in the city?
Because that's where the lot line is, where the lot line ends up.
So it's probably not even Royal Oaks, it's probably whoever's buying this lot.
It's the homeowners.
Referring to Royal Oaks fourth edition,
Right.
Royal Oaks owned the waterway west of you guys.
That waterway that goes east to west.
Correct.
It looks like that on this map.
What got cleaned up last year.
But Karen's point is, waterways are unique, it depends kind of how it's recognized. I mean, this probably was a waterway that probably had existed there when it was a farm field. So it's been there long enough and established enough, I don't know that any property owner over whose lot that lies could go fill
Well,
it
I
in.
can tell you right now that Royal Oaks is the ones that created this.
Yes.
Created the waterway.
There's huge, I have a huge 12-inch pipe that runs underneath Heather, between Heather on both sides, and then it runs all the way, and then there's another one that's built completely underground, but it comes out at Peosta Road. So basically, I get 4 dumps. I get Peosta, Heather, Cassandra, and Royal Oaks, all in my yard.
Yeah, and I can see where obviously they put those roads in, they put culverts in to put the road in, but the ditch itself maybe was in that location. And they just put culverts in to build the road.
Yes.
So, are you looking at the new development, the 2 cul-de-sacs?
No.
Yeah, I can see Kinsley and Riley, Heather, and
Sure.
Cassandra here.
So, there used to only be one road when it was still a field, and then they put in 2.
You're talking about Riley
So-
and Kinsley?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it looks like the drainage is all on the east side of the Riley lots. So, which would be your backyard.
Right.
But it appears anyway, the ditch is kind of on the property line, probably more on the Riley Court lots though than yours.
Yeah.
And then the ditch that goes under, from Cassandra, under Heather, heading in a, down to what looks like a wet retention area. At the other end, that's the ditch that appears more established and it just kind of bends a bit, which suggests to me that that's probably been there for a while and wasn't necessarily installed by the developers.
I don't know if we want to go that deep tonight. And I think it makes sense to let Dean and some other people more familiar put this together.
Just feeling left out.
So, yeah, just looking at the map for, the property lines by the Dubuque County Assessor, the city doesn't own any property throughout any of that. It's all lot lines, well, it may be, I can't speak to that, it is what it is. But nonetheless, I think we'd like to still be a part of trying to help figure out what the next steps are, right? There's apparently.
And it's something that you don't see very often. But in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I said one of the things that they did, they had huge problems because they had 3 rivers that come together and all these flooding issues, is they finally had somebody come in and they created all kinds of waterways. And once they did that, all their water was away because now the water could actually get away from everything and had a place, they most of them do go to retention ponds or whatever. But when they have these major rains, they don't have the flood that they used to. I mean, I don't worry too much about it flooding back to my house. Because even after that 15 inches of rain back in 2011, it still stayed away. But now I concern myself with this development that more runoff is going to be in my backyard.
And when they moved the road closer, because
Yes.
it used to be so much further behind us, and it almost looked like they were gonna have like 1 acre lots behind us.
Yeah.
And then they just moved that whole road over, so it's concerning.
I don't think anybody's debating that.
Yeah, so I appreciate it,
Yeah, would like to try to help figure out what the right next step is there.
Sounds good. I will probably send out an email if that works. Is there one to email? Just kind of open up the communication, or
So-
will you have my address, I guess you can let me know. or
Yeah,
is it-
I don't know who internally will
Okay,
take a lead on this. It might be just a little independent look and we'll figure out where it goes.
okay.
So if it's okay with you, I'll put myself on the hook to make sure we've got some kind of a closed loop with you.
Okay.
Is that fair? All right. Good. Thanks for coming.
All right, thank you.
Anything else under citizen comment? I can take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
John,
My guy.
meeting's adjourned.